On today's episode of Let's Grow Together, I talk with Charlotte Ferreux, and wow, this is a powerful episode that goes in a number of different directions, but almost comes full circle on so many levels. Talking about the power of disconnection. We're often so connected on so many things and so attached to certain things, and where it can be super valuable to disconnect. And Charlotte's a high performance coach from Brendon Burchard. She's certified high performance coach, which is so awesome. And, if you've watched the show, I'm a big Brendon Burchard fan. And so, really diving into different levels. We talk about fear. We talk about patterns that often can be passed on from generation to generation. So just a really awesome episode that I know you're going to enjoy. Just a really great conversation. So let's just dive right in. But first, the intro. Welcome to Let's Grow Together. My name is Nick Monotatibus, motivational speaker and digital marketing strategist. And this podcast is all about helping you grow both in life and business. Let's dive in. We are back and I am excited. We were just talking before I hit the record button and can already tell that this is going to be a great episode and diving into a number of different areas that are going to be enlightening and informative for all of you. So I would like to welcome Charlotte. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
No problem. Real quick, tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Sweet. So my name is Charlotte Ferreux. I live in British Columbia in Canada, small little town. I've been super blessed that when I had my two children, I was able to come back to my small community where my parents live and to really be able to build out what I call my freedom life and to work within my level of passion and service from home and really role model the way. I'm a single mom of two beautiful yet fiery children. And, which obviously has its ups and downs. But I love that I'm able to role model how to be able to enjoy life, to be an incredible entrepreneur, to develop strong, amazing relationships, not just within my own community, but really looking at the world as that platform and to really go after the things that I desire and really surrender into the process of just enjoying it and not just being driven by goals, but clear yet disconnected a little, which is pretty cool. I two different, facets within my business. I started off, I've got my coaching consulting company called Thrive Coaching and Consulting. And we really we help people-focused we help create people-focused cultures within organizations and within digital businesses as well. So, and then the other part is, which I'm launching soon, but it's called the Female Founders Club, really helping women step into their leadership, their scaling, and their growth for those expert kind of professionals or already entrepreneurs. Because I truly believe, and me having gone through this process, that when you heal and you give the right tools and strategies for a woman to really step into their voice with confidence and command, there is so much that ripple that happens throughout the family, throughout the community, it's felt, it's needed, and really still connects into the heart of our world needs stronger leaders from all sides. So that's in the nutshell what I do.
Yes, love it. There are a few things that you said that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit. One thing that you mentioned was just like being a role model and how, important that is. But you also mentioned being like disconnected. So I was hoping you kind of could elaborate a little bit because that's not usually a word I feel like that is used much.
So true.
So if you can elaborate more, on like kind of what you mean in that regard.
Yeah. So and take into mind my whole journey kind of led to this place. And now what I love to teach is not only can you be performance driven, like my background is I'm a high performance coach. So everything was very results focused, but in all areas of life, not just one area of life in general. So it was always, performance getting to the next level, but without, doing any kind of cost or harm to your relationships, to your health, to yourself in any which way. And so, so I kind of took it one step farther, which is I see so many amazing people going after incredible things, and it doesn't matter what walk of life of who I'm coaching. It could be a, you know, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, could be a, you know, a person that's stepping into being an entrepreneur for the first time. We get in our own way. And part of it is, it's great that we're performing towards a goal. We need that clarity. But too often where I see people quit and get very unhappy in the process is that you get so attached to the outcome that it can't be any other way than that. And then there's so much meaning attached to when you don't get that desired outcome, or it looks different than what you thought, that then all of a sudden, you know, I see so many clients then be like unhappy, like as if there wasn't a proud moment that got built towards that time. And when I look at it, it's like, let's give ourselves a shake. Like, this is not what it's supposed to be about. You know, at the end of the day, when we're, I'm sure, going to leave in whatever capacity that we leave in, we're not thinking about how we missed the mark by, like, you know, just like, you know, whether it's money, whatever the metric is. We care about where our time went. We care about, like, I should have spent more time here, or why didn't I enjoy that enough? Like, if what we're doing is not leading to more joy and more appreciation of the ups and downs, then we're missing the mark. And that's, I believe, like, truly what I'm meant to teach people is that, yeah, I'm not saying that the darker times or the harder times don't sting. They always will. Do you know what I mean? But allowing ourselves to surrender into that process and really try and pull purpose into all of those parts allows you to build the strategy and the tools to be able to be more fluid in the ups and downs that happen in business and life and everything else. Because ultimately, it's inevitable. We are going to go through hard times, and some more than others, you know, in different ways. Those who move through it have built those strategies. And that detachment, when I say detachment, or what word did I use? Disconnected. Yeah, okay, disconnected. Same thing as detachment. You know, when I went through my yoga certification, a big thing that we learn is how to detach, right? And not be attached to things. That's where we have misery, is when we become too attached. Yet we need to still be clear and work towards that clarity. So it's not about just like randomly shooting an arrow and hoping it's going to land somewhere close to what will make you feel happy. It's having the clarity, but being attached, no expectation, but do the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's so awesome because, you know, it's just, again, it's a unique message. We often focus so heavily on what are the goals, where are we going, how are we going to get there, focusing on these numbers that we want to focus on. And so, you know, here it is again. And I think, you know, again, and I'd love for you to elaborate more, but it's like, we can have those numbers, like shoot for those numbers, but again, just like not being attached to those numbers. So for somebody that's like so driven and so focused on those numbers, how do we detach ourselves, you know, when that's our driving force?
Yeah. So it's inner work for sure. And this is where I always say, like, we need to have space to be able to do some of that inner work. And again, too often, some highly achievers will or those who might not want to yet kind of sit in what I say, sit in the muck. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to feel that, so I'm going to keep myself busy. You know, I was notorious to doing that for so long. Watch my dad do that, just busy, 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 doing lots of stuff. Awesome. But never kind of like, just, you know, sweeping a lot of things under the rug. So the first thing I always share with people is like, you need to have some open space to be able to just sit and reflect and gain that perspective that you need, and to let the things that need to come up and feel them. They don't mean anything, right? Like, our feelings navigate us to understand and ask the right questions. Yet we've been positioned for so long to think that, like, when we feel sad, it means something bad. Like, when I hear my children say that, it's like, no, it's okay. Like, love the sad. It's okay. That doesn't mean something bad. It means what questions do you need to be asking yourself as to why you're feeling that feeling? And when you explore it through a lens of curiosity, then it makes it a little bit more joyful. Like, you know, it might still feel sad, but then you're like, oh, got my detective hat on right now. Like, you know, you can bring a little bit more joy into exploring why there's certain things that continue to show up for us over and over again, where we're avoiding certain things that we need to. Because if we want to slay those goals, it requires us to be in like our purest, highest form. And so anybody who's doing shortcuts, which I did for a very long time too, then you're going to get shortcut results at the end. You won't even know what you're capable of. Like, we don't. And even when we get to a certain level, we still don't know what we're capable of, right? It's like an infinity of us just putting a ceiling on ourselves. So going back to the question, carving out that time at nighttime, I sit down and, you know, just have like some moments with myself right before bed. And I truly will say out loud, you know, gratitude for the hardest moments. And in those hard moments, like, I have to do some deep soul searching to be like, you know, I'm thankful that person did that. I am thankful this got handed to me, not out of faking it. It might feel like it at first because you're really needing to connect the dots, but getting that expression to a place where you're like, no, I am so thankful that happened because this is what I learned. And I started doing that every single night. And I say it out loud, so I probably sound like a crazy person, but that's okay. Only my kids hear me. And there's something about saying it out loud that solidifies the learning inside of me. And I'll even go as far as to say, you know what, I got it this time. Like, I may have been handed that lesson a couple times, but something within me kept allowing it or kept attracting it or something. Or sometimes it's like, maybe I needed to learn how to set a very clear boundary. And for a lot of people, that's where I see them hold back, is that they're afraid to go into conflict, but it's not conflict. It doesn't need to mean that. So that space is essential to get real with ourselves and to have more fun with it. Yeah.
I love it. Yes. Love the sad. Like, I had to write that down because I feel like that's just an awesome quote that you don't hear. Again, very unique in just embracing the bad or negative things that often happen on us and taking gratitude towards those things. Because like you said, there's not a lot of lessons that you learn through that and accepting that. And I actually have recommended that practice of just like saying things you're grateful for that aren't necessarily positive things. So I think that is so cool. And I wanted to kind of elaborate on this a little bit more in regards. So this is your nightly routine.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other pieces of your nightly routine?
So I'm like, this is where I throw in a little woo-woo, right? Like, and this is my own journey, and each person needs to figure out their things that allow them to ground. Because oftentimes, and I'm sure, you know, like with everything that's going on in life, and for me, obviously incorporates, you know, co-parenting and children and like the influx and the little fires that come up everywhere, and like, you know, developing a team and all of those things, is I need to make sure I ground myself down. So I absolutely have always had a pull towards like crystals and reflection and journaling. Did I ever do it consistently? No, it was just like everything for me was very like, if I feel like it, I do it. And if I don't, then I don't, you know? And then when I stepped into more of that kind of high performance process with which I was certified in, is very about the routines and the habits that set us up for consistency. And then what I moved into, because then again, I was watching so many clients and myself, you're like doing something consistently and you feel good. And then all of a sudden life happens and then you fall off the wagon and then you're like, and then you start to harp on yourself and get really hard on yourself. So I feel like the cushion in between that's helped me give myself grace, but also give myself a kick in the butt. And only you will know what your truth is with this, because we can lie to ourselves, justify things. We're very good at doing that. But it is to get real with myself at night, to ground myself in. I've got my little corner that I sit in with my pillows, and just kind of create the ambiance. I'm very connected to color and feeling. So that's me. I'm it's kind of like from my old fashion design world, kind of gets pulled into some of my setting at home now. But creating that grounding space, not only thinking about, those gratitudes and really like, and also what do I need to acknowledge myself for, the work that I'm doing that's not always seen. No one would pick up on it. I know that it's true. But yeah, I feel like I meet myself where I'm at. If in the morning, I've got what I call like my optimal kind of like morning routine. Does it happen every single morning? No, and I'm okay with that. I have a long version, a medium version, a mini version, and if I only get one thing done on it, fantastic. But I know at the end of the day, if I just gave myself an out, or if I truly, honestly couldn't get it done. Do you know what I mean? And that conversation that I have with myself, that's where the heart of me being able to coach myself. Like I always say, it's great. I love coaching people, but my job is not to be their Band-Aid for life, right? My job is to give them the tools so that they can be I always say like their own self-coach, the self-coach within us. And it's a dialogue that we have to ourselves that we should be having all the time. And because we are our own most powerful coach. So sometimes it sounds like, okay, Charlotte, you know what? You did the best that you could. Like, this is what you got handed, and you at least got this part done. Fantastic. Feel great about that. Or some nights it is, Charlotte, get your shit together, because like that was not the best of you. Don't tell yourself that like that was the best use of your time. And then other times it's, well, why? So what was it that came up that I wasn't focused, or I wasn't able to step into the right action? And then it's starting to look at like, where am I missing clarity? So I meet myself exactly where I'm at, and I'm not afraid to, either step in with a little tough love, but still kindness, or to just give myself complete grace, because life is messy and it's hard.
Awesome. Yeah. No, and again, this is a unique experience too. So one of the things that we often discuss on this show, and I have a mild obsession about it, maybe a little bit more than mild, about like morning routines. So for you to bring that up, that you have like one that you kind of do, like middle, like bigger one, I find fascinating to have different levels, because for me, I am very strict on like what I do, my morning routines. And based on what you're saying from a personality standpoint, I don't know if you've ever read the book Better Than Before, but you seem like you made me a rebel. I don't know if you, I don't know if that's true, but just based on definitely would check it out. Jess O'Connell, she mentioned it to me, and I immediately started listening to it, so I'm loving it. It's top of head. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But your morning routine. So tell me a little bit about your morning routine and kind of how it's incorporated. Like, what's the things that you stick to, and what's the kind of stuff that maybe you skip sometimes?
Yeah, and so I'm gonna share with you. I don't know if I'm like the rebel label or not, but we'll just go with this. But here's the thing: is that life happens sometimes, right? And I mean, I'll use the easy example of parenting, because that can screw up your morning pretty quickly when like you have this idea and this perfect plan on how things are going to go, but yet there's this variable that could be a complete wild card that you have no idea what is going to happen with, right? It's kind of like going through a field and you're like, where's the landmine? Like, I don't know where it's going to go off. But so when I say I've got different ones, is that like, and I look at it like time. If I have an hour, here's my hour-long morning routine. Let's say I only have half an hour. Here's my 30-minute morning routine. That's a condensed version. Or let's say I have 5 minutes, because literally that is what has happened that day. I can either choose to get very disappointed and feel frustrated from the get-go that my morning routine did not happen the way that I wanted to. Therefore, how could I possibly be great for the rest of the day? Because then how you start your day is how you end your day. So I shifted to, okay, this is what I got handed. I'm meeting life where life just threw me what I needed to learn. How can I still ground myself and get myself focused for the day? So that's where I'll modify really quickly. Some different things that I do depending on length of time and how much depth. I love to sit and reflect. Like I'll drink my coffee, sit and just kind of like, it might look, if you were in my house, like she's just staring off into space, but I'm not. I'm like letting myself process whatever needs to come up. And I give myself a chunk of time. Let's say I have 15 minutes for that. And I don't overthink it. I just kind of because there's so much that happens, you know, that we just glaze over because of time, because of so many things. And the best problem solving happens when you give yourself space to just let those dots connect. So doing things like that, reading, you know, taking a book and again, depending on how much time, might be 15 minutes worth of reading, might be 5 minutes worth of reading, but getting myself thinking about something else. I don't look at news. I don't, you know, anything like that. Try and keep my phone kind of away from me, unless I have to jump onto something. What else? I'll do some like yoga stretching, you know, kind of like open up my body, just open up that blood flow. Depending on how much time will depend on how many things I do in that sequence. Sometimes I'll listen to something, just, you know, I'll put on, like, I love James's podcast, so I'll like put on, you know, something that will help me look at life differently. And because what I know to be true is if I keep thinking the way that I'm thinking without something new popping in, then I'll always just keep doing what I've always been doing in that way. And so having new insights challenge my already belief system is really important to me. And if not in the morning, I just sprinkle it during the day. I've gotten to the place where it's like, I mean, I'm not putting in as many hours as I was, but I'm getting better outcomes than I ever have. So it's like the model is working for me specifically. And I'm more in tune with myself. I'm more connected to myself than I ever have been. I'm more honest and real with myself. It could be me journaling some things out, or great creative ideas start to come up. I might capture them via audio, or I might just like, you know, jot them down. And then after my morning coffee, I'll usually make a shake of some sort. So, you know, it just kind of like starts off my day like that, drinking water, my vitamins. I'm huge on like, I've got like performance set kind of vitamins that help me progress through my day with the health and cognitive health perform at the level that I need to perform. So yeah, those are kind of few areas that fall into my morning routine.
Yeah, and again, it's so cool because there's this theme now that we have through this episode of being disconnected, and here you are disconnected to your morning routine. And I think that is just so cool. I know from my study of habits that like one of the obstacles that it can often come up with people who have very strict morning routines that are very committed to them often can become shackles, and
Mm.
that kind of like eliminates the purpose. And so I love the idea of just being a little disconnected to this aspect of like, oh, it has to be this way. And if again you're choosing for it to affect you by, oh, now I can't do this, now I'm upset, and that's not gonna, you know, get you anywhere. And so I think that is just such a cool aspect. And I would love to kind of shift a little bit because this is like driving me nuts that I need to ask this. Just like learning more about kind of your experience as a high performance coach trained by Brendan Burchard, and kind of like how that has brought value to you, you know, through your business journey and life journey.
I love it. Great question. And like I've kind of sprinkled since the beginning there, like I think part of my secret sauce in life, when I look back, and it happened by accident, like it wasn't a purposeful thing. And then I realized like, oh, wow, I really was listening to, let's call it your intuition, my, whatever was coming up on the inside. And I've always trusted a certain feeling that comes from within. And now I do it on purpose. Whereas before I just would get very passionate about something and just move forward without really thinking things through. That's part of my personality. So, you know, there was, if I bring you guys back like a little bit further, so where my personal development journey truly started was, I happened to walk into a job at Lululemon Athletica in 2003. I had no intention of staying. It was, my friend got me the job. I was thinking I was going to go back into the fashion design area, like career. And then when I started with the company, and there was only 2 or 3 stores at the time, so I was really lucky that I got to like grow with the organization. But they were my first introduction to real, actually, right before that was my true introduction to true personal development. My friend who had been working for them had opened up and was like, oh, I just went to Landmark Education. And me being the curious person that I was, I actually went before I started working for the company. And because that curiosity, again, is a skill and a value that I hold very dear to myself. It has actually gotten me fantastic results to be super curious and a little bit carefree. So I was like, oh, I want to go experience it, you know? So then I went, and I've always just taken things like a grain of salt, take what I love, leave what I don't, and just really kind of experience things. So during my 7 years with Lululemon, the reason why I stayed is I found that calling from within of really helping people lead and serve, and marrying that with operations and systems. Like, I had no idea that was inside of me. Like, no clue. Like I said, I was like on a mission to become a fashion designer. Like, that was that. So complete opposite in terms of spectrum. And then I went, and then, so we started working with Brian Tracy, was a huge influence to me, doing the psychology of achievement. Like, this was like pillars that we needed to do as we, you know, stepped into this culture that Lululemon had created. And the reading, the books, and Stephen Covey. And like, so I was introduced to so much from I was 23, 24 years old. And what a blessing. Like, part of my mission now is like, personal development to the youth, you know, so that we build these strong leaders is so essential. But then, you know, so I ended up, you know, making my way through Lululemon, got pregnant, got back home. Anyways, I won't go into all the details there, but then, so then I started doing some work with an MLM called Beachbody. And again, it's just what I needed. I missed having a team. So I started to get really excited and learning that kind of model. And I met some really incredible people. And in that meeting, one of my mentors, when we got to a certain place, started coaching us through a process. And so what I was given was coaching me through what now I know to be true is high performance coaching. And the minute I started getting coached within it, so this was back in 2014, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to be doing this, right? Like, it was this like deep passion and calling, and there was not one iota of like me trying to break it down or make it too much of a logical process. So I immediately, like, I'm like, message, how do I get certified in this? Like, this just needs to happen. And within that time frame, I made some real pivotal changes in my life, and I stepped into what I would say was that first huge realm of like self-worth, shifting internally, really creating the path so that I could succeed and really become the person that I knew inside that I could become. And so that's when I started my journey, just even as a single parent. And then lo and behold, a few months later, and this wasn't normal for people to step into a big ticket kind of item right away, but I just knew I needed to be there. So I made it happen. And I remember, you know, I'm sure people thought I was like crazy at the time, like newly single and like off to the States, and like just, it was just kind of crazy. But it was for me a process, like to understand that people need process to build, transformation in a way that is timely, right? When we, again, just randomly do things and hope that we're just going to change, when somebody comes to you and says, just like, with BBD, like, here's a process, follow it. And if you do the work, again, that part's on you, but if you do the work, this is what can happen for you. And there's no way, like, I watch my clients' journeys, and it's, I feel so much gratitude and it's such a blessing that I could be a part of people's lives to help facilitate a process, to help them be more of who they truly want to be and achieve the things that they truly want to achieve while feeling the way that they truly want to feel. And that's my own personal kind of like little recipe that I pull into high performance coaching. And then it continued to evolve where, I started to diversify and pull in, neuro-linguistic programming and the coaching, with James, that came into my life at such a beautiful time, so that I could learn within myself what I needed to learn to then unlock another level of service for people. So it just becomes deeper and deeper and deeper and so much more masterful. And that just comes with time. So long answer to your how'd you get there with high performance coaching, but it unlocked within me, and I will always have so much gratitude that to me unlocked another level of service that I don't know that I would have gotten there in the same way had Brendan and his team and that certification not come into my life. But I had to make the choice to trust it, to invest in it, and to go do it, even if it didn't logically make sense. So that part I give myself credit for, because I needed to make those choices.
Yeah, love it. And it's funny. So you've mentioned now twice, you're like, oh, people probably think I'm crazy. And it's like, we are crazy.
We are crazy, and I'm okay with that.
I am so okay with it. I think, we are a little crazy. That's why we're doing what we're doing, and other people are just going through the motions doing what they're doing. And I think that there's just so much more to be accomplished. You talking about, kind of stepping into your greatness and being who you were meant to be, and having that desire to be more, is inspiring in its own self. Because I think we all have that feeling, but then we don't always act on it. And that's one of the biggest differences between the high achievers and the high performers, is just the ability to, and making the choice to act, regardless of whether or not you think that it's crazy, or you think you may fail, or you think you may, not get the results.
Yeah, so true. I mean, and that's why fear is such a big pillar that we explore, and the meaning that we put around fear. The thing is that how to move yourself through fear is only through action, right? So you got to get clear that there's a fear there. So like whether physical, like, oh, I feel it, like we usually feel physical symptoms of fear. So the more that you know how you tick and function, the more you can be like, oh, there's that feeling again. What is that? Right? Like you explore it a little bit and then you make a decision. If it connects to a goal that you have in the future, why wouldn't you step through? And the more the times that you step through, the more confidence you have in the process of really trusting yourself. And I believe that the umbrella over top of everything is you're developing trust with yourself. It's not, how can we trust other people when we likely don't even trust our own ability to make decisions for what our body is sharing with us? And that's where we're getting most of our information. And I do believe on the other side, when we don't have a trusting relationship with ourselves, we're more likely to get sick. We're more likely to have, issues around mental health, or, just not being happy or being super regretful in our life. Yet we're the ones standing in our own way. And again, I say this very loosely, just in terms of normal realms of fear. I'm not talking trauma. I'm not talking like anything beyond that. I'm just, what we deal with in our normal day-to-day. And that's why I find understanding our mindset and understanding our subconscious and our conscious and patterns and beliefs and generational patterns, even seeing patterns that have been passed through me to my children that weren't even mine. Like seeing how patterns came from, like, all the women kind of had a pattern that they acted like this, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well then I'm here to break that pattern. If I'm getting that clarity, it's my job to act and not hope that somebody else is going to change. I need to be the one to be responsible to say, the buck stops with me and it stops now. And what I love to share with people is that that does not mean that I have been perfect in the past. Actually, I made some choices that, you know, I'm very regretful of. And that's okay. We're human beings. When there is a part of us that's not healed or is fractured or that we have been avoiding, there's likely going to be some choices that are not to our highest and best because it's coming from a broken place, right? It's fragmented. And so part of that personal development process, hopefully, is that you're more in tune with yourself and you're healing. I use the word healing, but like, it's because there's a fracture, there's a crack, just like a house. If you build a house on top of a crappy foundation that's filled with, you know, different things that have, you know, that have broken it or cracked it or like kind of got put together in a cheap kind of way, sure, you know, now you want to like make sure it becomes sturdy before you build the frame on top of it. And for most of us as adults, we're now going back to the foundation and saying, okay, we might not have chosen what God delivered to us, but now it is our responsibility to heal it, because every time we shift, we change people around us. It's an energetic, whether you look at it energetically, whether you look at it from a role modeling standpoint, whether you look at it from how people say, oh, that's so inspiring, right? But like, there is a natural ripple. And I see it happen through my children all the time. It's magical. Like, and I
Yeah.
love using it, but it's magical.
And I would like to get some more clarity on that. You mentioned like patterns that have been passed on, and I was hoping you'd be willing to share a specific example of that you've seen passed down that wasn't yours, that your children did.
Sure. I'm totally open to sharing that. So, so how would I unravel this? So up until a certain point, there was a common thread, a pattern in my life where, although I held a very high bar with business and people that I have around me, like very like, but in my personal life, I often allowed for maybe behavior for people, especially in partners, that that wasn't, you know, okay, you know, but I because I didn't want to lose that thing, or then my picture of life would kind of get shattered based on, again, how things kind of unfolded for me specifically within my life. I had some, what I didn't even know to be true, some abandonment issues that actually didn't come from my parents, came from kind of past generations. And so now I'm able to see from like big picture on the outside why it was that I attracted certain qualities and certain behaviors into my life, but also why I allowed them to stay for the time that I did. Now, I say this very because I also believe I needed to have those experiences in my life to be able to serve at the level that I did. And again, what got me out of it was at some point saying, okay, enough is enough. Like, these patterns don't work for me. This isn't how I'm showing up. I need to have a different level of worth within my life. And so the part that connects past generationally is that when I look at the lineage of, you know, women within, you know, I don't know my dad's side, but let's just say on my mom's side, there was, and part of it was also generational in terms of like how people were with religion and how people were within like with their partners. There wasn't divorce, there wasn't this, there wasn't that, you know, but there was this element for some of the women to, you know, be with individuals who were struggling with certain things, and that it wasn't an option for them to go or to set boundaries or to do. And I'm like, you know, I got to a certain place where I'm like, I have a daughter. Like, I want her to make fantastic choices with men and to raise that bar and to only allow what, you know, we allow what our worth is. So every choice that we make is a direct correlation to how we feel about ourselves, regardless if you know that or not. Our choices are coming from somewhere. And for me, they were coming from a bit of a void. And I didn't it's like I kind of knew it, but I didn't fully know it until I got into that part of the journey. And it didn't just end there. Like, you don't just get the thought and the knowledge and all of a sudden you're like, oh, and that one's done. It's continuation of growth and awareness and like, ooh, catching that quicker and then making different choices. So it's a process. But that's one directly that I said to myself, and I remember the words because I was going through Brendan's high performance coaching process, and the session was courage. And I remember that the voice that came up inside of me was, Charlotte, if you don't choose differently now, you never will, and you will never amount to being the person that you know you could be. So you can't be that person in this scenario. You need to be okay with taking that step and feeling the fear and not knowing how things are going to go. Because the truth of the matter was, I was scared that, like, the what ifs. What if I do this and then that happens? What if this happens? What if it's worse after I make the decision? What if? And it led me to, like, I was getting sick. It was putting such a stress on me. And the truth was that when I took the step and I was honest and I was clear and I made a decision, everything actually, and in my scenario, I'm not saying this will happen for every single person, but in my scenario, everything turned out better than all my fears told me to be true. And that was my first realization that what my mind has been feeding me, if it's negative, critical, judgmental about myself or somebody else, is not the truth. And I cannot be trusted to make a decision based on that information. I learned how to separate the true intuition versus the crappy talk that is trying to get me to play small. And in doing that, we healed our family. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much stuff. And that was just one kind of scenario. And again, it wasn't really just based on him. It was also all the choices leading up to that there was a common thread and a common pattern, and that lied within me. That's what I attracted as my mirror. So, you know, it wasn't everyone else. It was like, I had to look at myself and say, the buck stops here. And if my daughter falls into some of those patterns, it's not because I didn't role model differently. It's because there's a lesson for her that she'll need to learn, but she will have been shown how to do things differently.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a great example. And I appreciate you being open and willing to share that.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing when it comes to children. And I was actually messaging my friend earlier today, and he was made a comment. I was like, man, you're really running. He's like, oh, well, it's nice. You know, my daughter comes out in the stroller and goes hiking with me. She's like, oh, we're just an active family. And I was like, well, that's learned. You know, your children learn what you do. You know, they see, I remember there's always like that quote of, you know, somebody on a bus reading is like, oh, how do you get your kid to, you know, read so much? It's like, well, he just watches what I do. You know, you can't tell your kid to read if you watch TV all the time. You know, such an important
Yeah.
aspect of how
So
we
true.
show up for our children.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to dive in a little bit more into, you mentioned, you know, fear as such a big part. And I'm curious because you did actually mention it in the patterns question when I had already thought about asking this question, but I'm wondering if it's the same or if it's different, if there's a certain situation or story that you have where you were like totally, you know, scared, full of fear, and were able to, you know, overcome it and triumph, even though you still had that fear.
Oh my gosh, so many. Like, now I feel like, and this is what I want to like provide hope for people, is that when you step through fear, it doesn't feel easier. Like, it's still, you still get the same symptoms, you still go through the same, like, oh my gosh, like, what if kind of process. But because the more you do it, the more you gain confidence, because you've seen how every other time you've done it, something incredible came out of it. Now, that something incredible could be debated by people, but for me, sometimes if I'm not meant to get something, this is the whole not being attached, then I'm not going to get it. But the clarity that I get in having gone through the process and then having to go through the not getting it is also a win. We need to learn how to move through the no's. Like when I think of being like an entrepreneur, and like a big part is sharing what we're doing, putting ourselves out there. Yet if every time something feels bad, or somebody gives you a no, or is like hesitant, or says something about you online, man, it's going to be a really bad process to go through. Like, and that again, I see so many people quit. They had a great intention. They probably felt a calling. They got passionate about something, and either they did the work and it felt really bad, or they didn't realize how much the work was work. Do you know what I mean? And then they're like, I kind of don't want to do the work to go through. And it's like, well, you need to have both the physical action of doing something and doing the work, and then also the mental action of, well, if I'm going to do it, like I might not enjoy every single thing that I do in it, but I am going to enjoy this process because every moment has intention and purpose. Every no is purposeful. We're always getting information that allows us to know what we need to grow within ourselves, to become more masterful within ourselves, to heal within ourselves. And in that information, that's gold. We're getting information all day long. Yet the unfortunate part is most of us put meaning on some of those bad moments, quote unquote, and then we make it mean something that's bad, rather than like, interesting. I obviously needed to learn a skill here. I obviously needed to have that conflict come towards me. I needed to learn how to use my voice that way. I still need to learn how to, master these different skills, because I'm a firm believer. Yes, you want to learn things, read things, go through things, but you don't know it until like you do it, you teach it, you go through it. And so if that's where our learning comes from, then bring on the harder times, because that's where I'm going to have the greatest amount of growth. And I might not will it into my life, but I'm open to it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Growing through that hard times, being open to the struggle. Oh, that's some powerful stuff. And this has been so amazing. This has been awesome. So we really dove into some amazing areas that explored. And that's why I love, you just never know where things are gonna go. And I just thought that's so cool, the different areas that we were able to tackle. And before you go, there's a few things. So first thing is, I love asking this question. Do you have a book that like you absolutely love? You recommend this book to anyone, you buy it for someone, it's just like the top book that you recommend?
If I had to choose one, top one, although I have so many books that I love, The Untethered Soul by James Singer, or I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but let's say James Singer. The reason why I love it so much, because no matter where you're at in life, us understanding what is happening inside our head and why we thoughts like become the truth when they're really not. I think that's something that we all need to better understand, so that we can call ourselves out and know when we're just getting handed some BS from our own brain. But yet in the past, we've just thought that that was the truth, and we've allowed it to label our own self-worth. That's why out of all of them, I lean on that one the most, because I could flip to any page at any day and I will get something that I needed to hear or needed to read right in that moment, because that's usually what trips us up the most in life. Is our brain, is our mind, is our ego, is our, is that other voice that we're hearing. And that's the part of the book that I always connect to. If you're hearing the voice and you're listening to the words, well, who's speaking them? And when again, it's that detachment of thoughts and self. Well, if I'm hearing them, then why is this voice feeding me this information, telling me I'm not good enough, telling me I can't do it? Oh, that goal's too big. Oh, are you sure you want to do that? What's that going to look like to people? Like, all of that stuff is garbage. But if you make it be true, then that becomes your identity. And what I think the most powerful thing that we can do is shift our identity, and really become the person that we know that we can be, and we all have it within us. It doesn't matter how we were born, where we were born, what we were doing. There are, I mean, most biographies come from struggle. Do you know what I mean? They didn't come from this perfect landing of like an existence where everything got handed. Actually, the messier, the better. So, you know, turn your mess into your message, and, you know, step into that greater calling, and understand like who is running the ship. It's not that voice anymore. And you need to choose to be the captain of your ship, which is your life and yourself. So yeah, that's why.
Yeah. Love it. Yes. What a great caveat to end on. I mean, yes, being the person you are meant to be. Love it. And then lastly, what's the best place for somebody to reach out to you, follow you, get connected with you?
Yeah, so a couple different places. I've got my website, charlotteferreux.com, and that houses, you know, the Female Founders Club and a lot of individual kind of coaching and projects that I do. For the work that I do with organizations, it's Thrive High Performance Leadership. So I help through an expert team that I have. We help businesses scale their people and their leadership and their executive models, so that they can scale and grow without compromising their people in that process. So a lot of leadership, a lot of high performance, a lot of coaching, and a lot of systems and tools. I've got my podcast, The Change by Choice Show, and I'm on all the handles. So Charlotte Ferreux, there's not too many of me out there. So, you know, on Instagram, on Facebook, yeah, come join the conversation.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much, Charlotte. I appreciate it. So much insight, some amazing things to reflect on. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. This has been just a great conversation.
Of course. Awesome. Thank you, listeners. I appreciate you guys. I know that you guys got a ton of value here that you can begin to implement into your life. So get out there, make it happen. And remember, let's keep growing together.
Wait, one more thing. I would first like to say thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this message, please take a moment to write a review. By writing a review, it helps people find this message and helps me help more people. And if you really, really liked it and you think this message could help someone else, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and please tag me at Nick J. Boni, NickJBoni, so I can show my appreciation for you. We can all win by helping each other grow. Thank you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.